So this is how we start. My name is Matthias, and um, I've got a project which is called AuthentiCity, and AuthentiCity is a project which has got the goal that every one of us live together in harmony and balance in a way of um, to 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 live authentically and always can relate uh, to this form. And yes, I'm very happy that you, David, um, has joined this call, this talk. Maybe do you want to say a little words of yourself, introduce yourself in a few
Yeah,
words?
sure. Um, yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm very curious where this will go. Um, I'm terrible at describing myself, but you said the first thing. My name is David, and my I dedicate most of my time to a project called Evolving Man, which is about co-creating a new culture of masculinity. And I actually today started writing down kind of what are some of the pillars of this new culture. And I will not go into all of them because it's quite a lot. But one piece that for me is really important is that I want more men to be embodied. I want more men to be connected to their bodies because there's a kind of intelligence that comes from noticing everything that's going on that is far more complex than just living up in our mind. So yeah, that's at least one of the things that I'm excited about.
Wait. Yes, this is AuthentiCity meets an evolving man. I like this very much. Um,
Yes.
yeah, um, the reason why I was thinking about you and doing this call was that I have uh, yeah, a new project which is actually running since this summer, which is called uh, Magic Places, and I sent a description. I wrote a description about it, and in this description, I wrote about polarities. As I mentioned before, um, the goal of AuthenticCity is to live in a harmonic and balanced way, um, to 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 get the vibe of authenticity. Authenticity. This is a hard word, but it's actually my word. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, and my my feeling is that to know how to live in balance and harmony, you've got to know the extremes, you've got to know the polarities. And in 2020, we see a lot of polarities in this world. And yeah, just to mention left or right or black and white and all this stuff. And yeah, you already mentioned it that you're working with men, you work with men, and yes, that's. I think it's one of the strongest and most powerful uh, resources we have. to explore the male and the female polarities. And yeah, so my first question is, what do male and female polarities mean? Do they exist in a kind of concept you use?
Yes. It's good we start with a very simple question. um, ah, you know, I've been in men's work for the past 3.5 years, and there's a lot of talk about masculine and feminine polarity and the qualities, and so these words are being used a lot, and they're obviously very charged, and everyone understands a bit of something different with them. And then we start mixing masculine and feminine with man and woman, so it gets very like, and so we use the same word, but everyone thinks kind of it's something different. And so the way that I like to start is actually saying I have no freaking idea. See, like what I know is how so we live in a certain paradigm, right? Like you talk about living in harmony, and if we look out into the world, we're not living in harmony. It's like very clear. And for me, the reason is that we're living in a paradigm that is based on competition, that is based on scarcity, where we are feeling completely disconnected from each other. So there are certain elements that are leading to our experience. And it's so common, it's like the water we're swimming in, that we don't even are able, it's really hard to reflect about it because you cannot get out, okay? So that's like the paradigm we're in. And so within that paradigm, we talk about masculine and feminine. And so we don't talk about like the principle as such, but we talk about how does masculine and feminine show up in this paradigm. So what does traditional masculinity look like in this paradigm that we're living in, or traditional femininity look like in this paradigm? So we cannot even say we know what it is. We just know how does it show up in the current world we're living in. And we can start thinking about how might it show up in a world that is based on collaboration and solidarity and mutual support. And it probably would be very different. So that's why I'm very cautious to say like, this is what masculine is and this is what feminine is, and I know what it is, because I don't. I need to start from there. And then the next thing is I can look at this polarity in 1,000 different ways. Like it's almost like masculine and feminine is like the polarity that I can put onto all other polarities. Like I can say day and night and ebb and flow and sun and moon and black and white and whatever it is, right?
Yin and yang.
Exactly. And so one way of using masculine and feminine that I have found useful is to say, and it's not like this is the complete description, but I can say one way of looking at it is the masculine principle is consciousness, is awareness, and the feminine principle is energy. So the masculine is like space, silence, pure awareness, right? Like a lot of what we practice in meditation. And then the feminine is energy, is flow, is change, is life, right? And so in a way, you could look at our society and say, especially men, because we're living mostly up here, we're very focused on awareness of like analyzing things, looking at things, but we're not really in the thing. And so that's why I'm so passionate about embodiment, because embodiment, if done right, is the place where consciousness and energy and life meet, right? So it's kind of the merging of the masculine and the feminine. Because if I'm unaware of, you know, what's happening in my body, it's just energy happening, but there's like, it's just an acting out of unconscious patterns. If I'm just in consciousness, in awareness, I'm disconnected from the body. I'm like, and everyone knows that. It's like observing something from a very far different, kind of like a bit like how often science does it. It's like this cold, distant, detached, as if I was not connected at all to what I'm looking at, as if there was no relationship between the two of us, right? So like this kind of thing. And then what happens if these two come together? And so that for me is embodiment. Or one way of bringing the two together is embodiment. And I say, and that's why I'm so skeptical about using these words masculine and feminine, is if we think that men should only be, you know, connected to awareness and consciousness, and women should only be connected to energy, then we're half beings. We're incomplete. And I don't think we're meant to be incomplete.
Wow.
So that's a short, long, complex, inaccurate answer to your question.
Yeah, that's, as you say, short, long, and complex, but yes, I get it. It's because I can feel you are in your element now, because this is the thing that you are working with, this embodiment uh, stuff. And
Yes. Can I
one,
add one more thing?
yeah, of course.
Because I think there's one more piece that's important is I'm skeptical of talking about this in a conceptual way, because I don't like, because as long as we're talking about it conceptually, we think we look at it objectively, but again, we're looking at it from a paradigm, from a particular way of living life that we're so conditioned to do that we cannot even see. Once we go into the experience, it's kind of different. And that's why I'm so passionate about embodiment, because exploring what does it mean for me to be a man, not as a thought, but as an experience, is very different. And it can be a very powerful experience that you might not be able to put into words, and that might be unique for every man, but it's a freaking experience that gives you, that has way more substance to it than a thought, because it actually lives in your body. And it's like, whoa, I have a feeling of what it can mean for me to be a man.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar uh, as you talked before. Yeah, I thought, yeah, it's not just a theory. It's acting. It's it's behavior. It's the it's body language. Everything of it.
Yes.
And I wanted to pick up the paradigm you mentioned before, and yeah, let's see question how this question will work out. But um, you talk about yeah, leaving these paradigms behind, and let's see what's behind it. What's behind of the concepts of male and female. Uh, I won't ask you how this world will look like if we leave these paradigms behind, because
Okay.
this would be an even harder question than the first one. But yeah, but what, which ways do you see? Maybe it's also a question of embodiment, but uh, yeah, which ways do you see to get out of concepts,
To get out of the concepts?
out of the concepts we live in? Yes.
It's a good question. Yeah, I think embodiment is a way to do that. You know, sometimes I think I've been thinking about this recently, that we tend to have like a very top-down approach to life, especially as adults, of like, I have ideas about how life works that I learned at some point, and that's how I look at the world. And it's almost like, and everything that doesn't fit into that, I filter it out as long as I can. And as soon as I cannot do that anymore, I enter a crisis because it feels like my life is falling apart. And then maybe I start changing, but maybe not. You know, maybe I find a way to avoid it. And embodiment for me is a bottom up, is like the other way around, is a bottom up approach. Is kind of saying, okay, I have these assumptions about life, but whether they're true or not, my experience is meant to tell me. And so I constantly need to be open to the fact that my concepts will never grasp reality as it is. So no matter which words we use for masculine and feminine, it's never going to hold everything that it is, because life is freaking complex. So yeah, it is a matter of embodiment and, I mean, embracing certain principles like not knowing. We're constantly avoiding the fact how little we know about life because it feels fucking scary, right? So the more that I'm able to feel the immense amount of existential fear about, I have no freaking idea why I'm here. I have no freaking idea about why I'm feeling the 7 different things that are happening in my body. My mind is telling me stories about it, but what the heck do I know? Like, how do I know that this is not just made up because I don't want to face the fact that I have no freaking idea? So embracing this fact that there's so much going on, like life is happening in each moment and it's so intense and there's so much going on and I know very little about it, is the only way that I can expand my knowledge. Not from a place of, I have to know because it's unbearable not to know, but from a place of, okay, I have absolutely no idea and I'm willing to learn. And so that, I think, is a again, it's a different paradigm, because it's a way of relating to life that is way more of a relationship, where I'm allowing myself to be informed by life, and I start seeing that there's an intelligence to life is unfolding, which is not how we look at life. We look at life as like this kind of mechanical thing that is happening. It's not connected at all to who I am, or it's not connected at all to my process. And I just kind of extract whatever I want and whatever I need, and I manipulate life so that it meets my needs. But that's like, that way I'm not going to learn. I'm never going to be informed truly, deeply by life.
Can you give us an example of um, how a typical behavior of an adult man or a woman uh, uh, within these concepts and paradigms we are talking about?
Yes, sure. So another polarity that we can look at is dominance and submission, right? And
Mhm.
so in our culture, we believe that it's masculine to be dominant and it's feminine to submit, right? So for example, if you look at sex, you know, the way that men and women learn to behave is that the man is active and the woman is pretty passive. Now, there is some truth, I believe, to this polarity of dominance and submission. Like, you know, there are many traditions that you know, talk about different ways of looking at how the masculine and the feminine interact, and how it's the masculine almost like overtaking the feminine, and it's like this the feminine surrender to this masculine force that is like this beautiful kind of merging, if it is consensual and if the masculine is like caring. Okay, so I used a lot of concepts right now. If you're listening to this and you don't resonate, just drop it. It's really just words. It's a metaphor that maybe helps, but maybe not. Okay, but so in our culture, we kind of believe that men are meant to be dominant and women are meant to submit. Okay, and we believe that regardless of whether that's like a natural impulse of men to be more dominant and of women to be more submissive or not. So it's almost like maybe it's true or not that there's a difference, but we don't even know because we're living in a paradigm where we believe like that's how it is. And so, for example, if I look at sex, you know, I hear from a lot of women that, well, it's not true. I haven't talked to women about this a lot, but like this is kind of what I got from my exploration is like, they believe that they cannot co-create the experience. They believe that they're just receiving, and they're really passive and almost like they're not really part of it. They're just lying there. Whereas the man believes like he has to perform. It's like up to him to create a good experience for both him and the woman he's with if they're heterosexual, right? And so just there, like there's already so much, I'm missing the word, like there is like a principle behind it. There is some truth behind it, but it's so like disturbed by our conditioning that it leads to men embodying this dominance in a really unhealthy way and women embodying this submission in a really unhealthy way. Make sense?
Yes, yes. It's, I've got this picture of performing, because you said performing, and probably it's because we are living in this paradigm, in this concepts. It's a lot of performing, uh,
Yes.
like we would be actors and
Exactly.
behaving, and
This is perfect.
it's not it's not reality. Actually, we are living,
Yes.
we are constantly doing um, Schauspiel, acting.
Yes. Like we're acting. This is such a powerful point, and it's exactly the difference between like so I mean, what we do as children is like we look to the outside of like, okay, what do I need to do to be seen as a good man? And so then I start behaving according to that, right? And that's what leads to what you're just saying is I'm not doing what is like a natural impulse, what like naturally comes out of me, which might be traditionally masculine or not. We don't even know. But it's like I'm behaving this way because I believe that that's like I learned that that's how a man is supposed to show up. And so as long as we're living in this kind of paradigm, it's pretty hard to talk about masculine and feminine without like falling into these ways in which we're performing. But yes, a brilliant point. Like, yes, we're performing all the time. and so that's why the way that I approach men's work is I prefer not to use the terms masculine and feminine, because for a long time I was like scanning myself and was like, oh, now I'm behaving in kind of a feminine way. But I'm not supposed to be so feminine because I'm a man. And it's such a mind fuck. It's like, it's almost like you're your own prison guard who's like constantly like checking whether you're doing okay, like whether you're doing the right thing or not. And if you're not acting masculine enough, then there's something wrong with you. Or if you're, surrounded by a lot of like feminist thinking, then maybe you're saying everything that's masculine, that I believe is masculine, is wrong. And so I shouldn't express any of that. It's the same in the end. It doesn't matter. It's the same kind of performance and like, yeah, like having this critical like perspective of myself, of constantly scanning myself and being like, am I acting how I'm supposed to act or not? And so it couldn't be further away from authenticity, from being like, oh, this is how I'm expressing myself right now. Cool. I
Yeah, I
guess
got the
that's,
same.
I don't know, maybe more feminine, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, that's I was thinking this already, and yeah, it's true, because I often think, yeah, yes, I know I'm a man, and blah blah blah, but in the end, uh, yeah, I want to be human, and to live authentically, and yeah, it's not. It's of course it's important, all this embodiment work you are doing, and but in the end, to live authentically, it comes, like you mentioned, from a natural way, and I think this natural way does already consist either male or female parts, probably both, because I believe that we have both inside of us, and and both qualities can show up at different occasions.
Yes, and let me give you like a counter perspective. I think what you're saying is completely true. And this is interesting. Like if we look at masculine and feminine, or like men and women from a place of like bodies, then we see certain differences. Like, well, women menstruate, men don't menstruate. Women can give birth, men cannot give birth. And so like that's a really interesting place to look at, because these experiences of course shape us. So being in a female body and having this kind of initiation, that at some point I start bleeding, which is a sign that I'm starting to be fertile, like I'm starting to be ready to like give birth to life. How incredible is this? Like I have the capacity to actually birth life. So like for me as a man, it's so mind-blowing, right? And so as men, we don't have this initiation, we don't have this experience. And so that's like one of the values of men's work is, there's this kind of saying that women birth boys, but men make men. So in all ancient tribal cultures, there were initiations, there were rites of passage where boys were taken through a process, through a challenge, through which they would become a man. And so that is a piece that I find very interesting. Like there seems to be something in our psyche that needs like a ritual or something to proceed, like to mature. And of course, women need that as well, but they maybe need it in different forms. And in some ways, I think women are like being initiated through what I just described, whereas men are not. And so most adult men are still boys because they didn't have this initiation. And they also like, they were never really clearly separated from their mother. Like that's what a father is meant to do. Like at some point, he's meant to take the boy, he's meant to take him away from the mother, if you so want, to kind of clarify that, hey, you're an independent being right now. You're not mom anymore. You're not like mom anymore. So that's just to put like a counter perspective and say, I'm not saying that like everything is made up about men and women. I don't believe that at all. I just believe that like I absolutely don't agree with a lot of like um, radical feminist perspectives that gender is completely made up. I'm just saying that we don't even know the truth.
Oh, that's powerful, and yeah, to round it up a little bit, I I would like to know. Um, yeah, we talked about, yes, about these concepts of, yeah, of political and societal uh, ways, and how things should exist. And we also have this in many other topics. And so my question is, do you can you compare this to other topics? Because as we spoke at the start, polarities are very common in the world of today. May you want to say a little bit of words to that?
Can you clarify the question? I'm not sure what you would like to hear.
Um, do you see other concepts of polarities
Uh,
behaving the same way as this male and female concept?
I think in general, it takes a maturity to um, to look at these polarities and find a way to hold both as equally true, valuable, and needing each other. And so, what we're seeing in the world, and I see within myself, is how I am very much in like an either or thinking, right? Like I create a dichotomy and I say this is right and this is wrong. It's right to be masculine as a man, it's wrong to be feminine as a man, or the other way around. It's right to be left wing, it's wrong to be right wing. And even here it gets complex, because I'm not saying like I'm not a relativist. I'm not saying it's everything the same and every opinion is like equally valid. But I need to create a space where I'm open enough to hold like opposing views and look at them and be like, since they exist, they're all part of life, right? Like they're already here. And I believe that everything that exists has some kind of meaning. And so the challenge is for me to see like, okay, what's the truth in this? And what's the truth in that? And how might they come together? And so that works for anything, like for any conflict, really. Like the conflict is that there are two sides who believe I'm right and you're wrong. And as long as that's the case, there will be no like moving forward. There will be no mutual recognition. There will be no, wow, Matthias, now I'm seeing that what you're saying has value. And that does not mean that what I said has no value. That just means that we're both adding value to a conversation. And that brings both of us to a new place. And so the maturity that it takes, or one of them, is the willingness to change my perspective. And that's, again, scary. It's scary to change the way I look at life. And it's safer to be like, I know how things are. This is how it is. I don't care about the evidence that is out there that says it's not how it is. I don't care about this. I'm going to ignore the fact that there is evidence that there's more to this. I'm going to stick to my thing. Right? And this, again, brings me back to embodiment, because like when I'm in my body, I can hold opposing things. I can feel deep sadness and joy at the same time. It's harder to do that in the mind. I find it easier to do so in the body. So for me, through the body, I learned to hold opposing things and be like, whoa, both are happening at the same time. What the hell? And then I start seeing, oh, maybe they can coexist. Maybe it's not an either or. And again, that does not mean that like both are equally valid and it's just like it's not about now we just go to the middle point of the two. Like that's way too simplistic. It's way more complex than that. But I need to have this openness that, okay, this is my opinion and it's okay to have a clear opinion and to be like, I think that's true, but then to stay open and curious to, oh, and there are other people with other opinions. Like what of their perspective might be true that I'm not yet seeing?
Wow, cool, very cool. Thank you so much, David. Do you have anything you would like to add to this conversation?
I mean, so much. I could talk about this for hours.
I can
No,
imagine.
just an encouragement for people to, to engage in conversations like this and I think this is a big learning for me. Put yourself in situations where people have different opinions than you. It's very uncomfortable. It's very challenging, and it's a big maturing process. Because one thing that happens to me, for example, is that I completely lose like my perspective. It's like, oh fuck, they're completely right and I just had it wrong. Or the other way is like, no, I'm right and they're wrong. And so this maturity that it takes of being like, okay, this is what I believe in and I have some evidence for it. It's not just made up. And there are people who believe something else. Whoa. And then to start dancing with the situation, like that's, the more we can start doing that as human beings, the more we can create a different world.
I have nothing to add about this. This is the perfect sentence to finish a talk. AuthentiCity meets Evolving Man. Thank you
Yes.
so
Thank
much.
you, Matthias. Mm.
So, bye bye and see you next time.
Yay.